Welcome to Begin, Build, Blossom, your business journey with Clarita, the podcast where we will discuss valuable insights, resources, and motivation to fuel your entrepreneurial spirit. Let's build a supportive community together. Subscribe now to Begin, Build, Blossom, and let's embark on your business journey. Welcome to another episode of our podcast, Begin, Build, Blossom, your business journey. Today we have with us Latoya Allen. Latoya is a passionate educator and mother with over 20 years of experience, spending more than half of her professional career in the admission sphere. In 2017, with her expansive admission knowledge, expertise, and a deep desire to circulate educational awareness, Latoya founded the ACES organization, ACES, which stands for Admission Consultants and Educational Services. Latoya joined us for part 1, and now we are happy to have her again for part 2. Let's continue our conversation with Latoya. So we've been talking about ACES. Can you just tell us a little bit more detail? What is ACES? What does it stand for and what does it represent?
So ACES is an access organization and it stands for Admission Consultant and Educational Services. And we educate and support families to access an independent school elite education. And in doing so, we work with schools and to help the schools to then diversify their school community as well.
Great. Thank you so much. So when we talk about independent schools, there's also the other options in terms of what schools we can go to that probably doesn't require as much legwork. So why would a parent decide to opt for independent school?
Number one was the class sizes. I think families are aware of public schools. Just a little background. I have to say, when I was, I grew up in the Bronx, and when I was younger going to school, it was the choice of public school or Catholic school. And then years development, school system, then the rise of charter schools came. Now, I always find that interesting that independent schools have always been there. But again, it wasn't in my frame of reference because my parents didn't know about independent schools, right? And then we have charter school that came up. And so we have so many families who are aware of Catholic school, public schools, and charter school, but not aware of independent schools. And so when I started to work in an independent school and I discovered independent schools, I saw the resources that these schools offer that public school that I attended definitely didn't have. I saw the education that was definitely different. I saw the diversity. I saw that those independent schools reflect, say, corporate America, or reflect like the working environment. And so I always say for families, I am not here to tell you you must apply to an independent school, right? I think as parents, you get to choose the educational system that works best for you and your child. But you also get to make that decision from an informed standpoint and knowing all schools and all those schools. And so ACES is here to say, you may know about public schools, you may know about charter schools, you may know about Catholic schools, and I want it to be our job to tell you about independent schools. And here you go with all the information, go visit, go tour, do your research, take a look, and understand that while these independent schools are PWI, predominantly white institutions, you and your child and your family belong at these schools as well. And don't let the price tag or the fact that you feel like I don't belong there stop you from applying, because there are resources that you can tap into and unlock an elite education for your child.
Thank you. And let's touch on that part where you said, I belong here. That brought up something for me, because as a parent who's trying to get my child into those schools, I definitely want her to go, but I would not be honest if I say that it's not one of the things I think about. What kind of experience she will have as a Black child in a school that is predominantly PWI. What does that mean in terms of the experience for my daughter, who's a Black child?
So I would say predominantly white institutions, again, I'm the honest from me, I said they were created by white people for white people, right? And over the years and over time, these schools have been focused on diversifying the schools, right? We can't deny the resources that these schools offer and the quality of education that independent schools offer. And when I say you belong, your child belongs, and they have the right to an elite education with high resources, right? Now, I always say make sure you're not going to these schools and feeling like you need to code switch or be anything less than your true self. So, as a mom with a Black daughter who put her child in independent school, I also made sure like she was still going to church. She was still tapping into like community space and things like that. She would go to the Y and she would have a mixed, diverse group of children when she was at the Y doing her swimming. But it was important for us to make sure that she received an education that we thought that was stellar and had the resources to support her and help her to be a lifelong learner. That was another part for us when we did our research. The independent school wasn't teaching to a test, right? Their curriculum varies from, say, a public school and a charter school. And so I wanted her to love learning. I wanted her to love going to school. I wanted her to understand, like, yes, there are the core classes and there's the arts, there's the swim, there's the sports, there's all these other parts of school life that you can have a well and have access to. And the resources for that comes with being in an independent school. It's just the way sort of like our country is, right? And the schools that have these resources happen to be these independent schools. And so that's what I made sure, that's what I wanted for my daughter. And so again, ACES is going to share the information and that parents want to tap into that for their children, but also understand that these schools, they need parent involvement as well. So I always tell parents, you're going back to school as well with your child when you attend an independent school. And I feel like these spaces can be helpful to our children, but you also as a parent have to be there to continue to parent and make sure that this access in this education doesn't come at a cost that is to your child's social, emotional, and their well-being. And so we just have to monitor that. And that's in any school that they go to.
Right. And in terms of support, having worked with all the different schools for so long, what kind of support do you see that is put in place for persons who first time in the whole family going to a school such as those? So maybe tell us a little bit more about the support structures.
So, like I said, I tell parents, you need to go tour your schools, go visit your schools before you say this is a school that you want to apply to. Make sure you're engaging with those schools, right? When I worked in an independent school, the support system there is, in terms of when children are admitted to school, there's a welcoming process, right? You have a buddy parent, you have ways in which you can connect with current families. This is even before you enroll in the school, right? And I was at my independent school. I co-created our lower school affinity group, right? And that's a space in which children can get together, see themselves, be a part of kids, be with children who look like them, have events with our families who look like them. So understand, like, look, there's a support system here within this bigger school that you're in. There's a support system here for you if you need to tap into that support system. And then when we talk about the academic side, of course, there's like extra tutoring if needed. There's, math centers, the writing centers, all those that they have different like reading specialists, math specialists, counselors. So there's all these personnel on the academic side. And then, of course, again, when I talk about the resources of you may have a child that's very into the arts, whether that's performing arts or visual arts, or you may have a child that's into the athletics. There's so many athletics arts options available in terms of like supporting your child.
And for kindergarten, those programs, that's already part of the tuition, part of the school program. This is not like an after school program that I have to worry about separately.
So for kindergarten, so they'll have their full day where they have their academics, and arts is a part of the program. Yes, your child will most likely have their music class, they'll have their art class, they'll have some sort of different foreign language options that as well as in the class as well. And then there's after school, which is most schools typically have an after school program that when my daughter in her school, she did swimming after school. right?
Mm.
And that was also that was a benefit for me where now I no longer had to do the swimming on the weekends because that's what I was
Mm.
doing prior to her going to the school. Fencing. She saw fencing and wanted to try fencing. Guess what? Fencing is there in the after school. Try fencing. So I always, for us, it was also helpful. Whereas these extracurricular activities and these experiences where prior to her going to her independent school, we were going to do these and finding different places and centers to do them on the weekend. We no longer had to do that because she was having these experiences in her school and it was after school when she was in lower school. Now, once you get to middle school, there's so many clubs and options that kids can just select and choose. And so think about that as you are visiting schools. When they're smaller, again, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, a lot of those other experiences is after school, but it's usually typically on campus at the school. And once you get to middle school or high school, there are different clubs that the students can choose.
Mm. And maybe we can touch on the social life. What does the social life of a student at an independent school look like compared to maybe public school?
It varies depending on their age and development, right? Look, I say when my child was in lower school, kindergarten, pre-K, K, they're constantly playing outside and like recess is a part of their, social life, but also after school. That was wonderful where sometimes I would go to pick up and other families were on the playground and she just wanted to stay and play with other kids on the playground. Or sometimes there were arranged play dates, right? That we would go on play dates or I would pick up and I would host a play date. When you are in kindergarten, birthday parties become your social life. Kindergarten, first grade, let me tell you, almost every weekend, your social life would be a child's birthday party. And so that's a big part of social life. As they get older, then you get to the space of depending on the school. There we have like the parties, the quinceañeras, the bat mitzvahs, sweet 16, those social life. And my daughter, she's a senior now, and she just arranges her own social life and her whole plans. No money, no nothing, no transportation, but they just make their own plans and then tell me what she's doing. So that social scene, and then also, this is where those clubs and the sports and activities, because sometimes her social scene, if she has like a get together with a friend, it's because my daughter's a theater major. These are people that she was in a play with, right? And so she's hanging out with the folks that she's in play with, or she knows some friends that they're on the volleyball team. So she's hanging out with some folks from the volleyball team. So they find their friends, they find their spaces. They also like cheer each other on, right? She's not on the volleyball team, but she has friends on the volleyball team. So she goes and she's like cheering for them and hanging out with them. So again, they create their friendships and they have bonds and friendship that's established as they're in these schools.
Nice. And you mentioned something about your social life. Basically, your kids' social life is your social life. And
A
we
thousand
talked
percent.
earlier about networking as well. And it makes me realize, even as the parent, and you also mentioned about going back to school. So you're actually opening up your social circle as well. You get to meet a lot of new people. You get to attend a lot of new events. So I can see how that just changes. It changes a lot for everybody involved. People you get to meet for the first time get to learn about you. You get to teach them and vice versa. So I could see how everybody's benefiting from this.
Absolutely. There's a part of it where, again, I went to work, right? And I found a job or a school I'm working, and in my job every day, I had some people that looked like me and some people that didn't, right? And navigating different cultures, different, racist ethnicities in the workspace and working with folks, just different, that diversity in which you're working with different folks help you to learn, help families learn about you, help adults learn about you, help you to learn about them. It
Hmm.
creates empathy and
Hmm.
compassion because once we are learning about each other, and so that's the beauty for me. It's been the beauty of for me having my child in an independent school where I feel like she's getting that lesson early on, where I didn't have that lesson when I went to school because I went to school with predominantly Black and Brown children, right? So I didn't have that lesson of what that looks like to learn in a diverse community.
Hmm.
And I had to learn
Nice.
that as an adult.
Hmm.
And it wasn't always easy as an adult. To be honest with you, it
Yes,
wasn't
I
always easy
concur. I definitely
when
have some experiences.
as an adult. So
Right.
I actually just from my experience, I like that my daughter's having these experiences now, and that I can and then there are times. Look, there am I saying that there are not hiccups? Sometimes there's hiccups, there's missteps, but I'm also learning with her, and I'm also helping her and talking with her and talking with the school if we need to do that, and how to navigate some hiccups or things that happen as she's grown at her school over the years and times, and she's been in her independent school for a while.
Nice. And how do we get over the stigma of being the financial aid student at school? Because sometimes I feel like that is just what it seems to be.
That's an interesting point because I love how families think about it like that, where it'd be like, oh my God, we're the financial aid family. But yet, when I think of college, right? And how many of us went to college and you took out student loan and you didn't walk on that college campus and said, oh my God, we're the student loan kids, right? It was sort of like you took out a student loan and you did what you had to do to get through college,
Mhm.
right? So there's that piece of it where I never put that stigma on myself as like, oh my God, I'm a financial aid. We are a family at the school and we are making contributions to the school as well. We are paying our tuition, right? It's not like we're getting a complete fire. There's a tuition that we're paying. And also my daughter's contributing, our family's contributing to the fabric of your school and just her academics and what she's doing in her theater and things like that. So I don't, it's interesting when parents think about it in that way, but when college time comes and you're older and you're going to college, you don't put that other stigma of walking around saying, well, I had to take out student loans or I had to take out X student loans. It's not even a thing. It's not even a thought, right? But yet we carry that at independent schools. And that's the part I guess I don't understand why.
Mhm. Yeah, it's just for me, it is something that comes up when I think about it. Like when I think about her experience, and I just think, what if people look at her and think that? But again, you said something important where you don't put that on yourself. So because sometimes you project, right?
Yes,
So that can be me projecting, but I would think that's something people do think about. But at least if we learn to change that approach and we approach it differently, that will make a world of difference.
absolutely. Absolutely. Again, I think it's all about your approach. And I also say, like, you pay tuition at these schools,
Hmm.
right? So there's this whole, oh, I'm a financial aid family. You pay tuition. Your tuition payment has to be paid. So
Right,
instead of saying, oh, I'm a financial aid family, I'm a family that pays tuition at the school.
right,
That is the fact. I am a family that pays tuition at the school. You pay tuition, I pay tuition. We all pay tuition at the school, right? The number of what you pay, right, shouldn't take away from the fact that you pay tuition at the school.
right. And talking about tuition, I am applying thinking, well, I really hope I get in. That's my first goal. Then I'm thinking, I really hope I can pay whatever tuition I'm having to pay. But what if sometimes I wonder, what if I am actually putting myself out there and really, maybe I can't really afford this? Maybe I'm doing all this and then at the end, I'm going to get a package and I'll just be deflated. How do you work around that with families or how families themselves work around something like that?
So financial aid is need based, meaning there's a process, there's an application you need to complete, and there's questions that's asked on the application to get a sense of your financials. And then there's also documentation, whether it's your tax documents, your 1040 taxes, your W 2s, just to get a sense of your financials. And the schools will take a look at that. And they said, based on all your financials, if you are admitted, here's what they feel like, you should be able to afford for financial aid, afford towards your tuition. If families on the day of their admission decision and they've been admitted and it's a joyful time and then they get their financial aid award and that award is outside of the realm of what this family feels that they can pay, there is a conversation that can be had with the school about having an appeal process and what that appeal process looks like. So I tell families that like there's a process that schools go through to make sure after they have all the data, after they have all the information, to if they're going to offer you an admissions package that they feel like will align best with your family's financials. And if for whatever reason there's something that they did not capture on those information that you shared, and the package financial aid offer is out of the realm of what you can afford, there's a conversation that can be had.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you covered that because sometimes we count ourselves out. So it's
I
good to do the thing,
I
put
tell
in the
people
work.
you
There is
can't
a
play the
way.
game from the sidelines. You cannot play the game from the sidelines. And it goes back to that action, that execution, right? Even when we talk about the business, some of this stuff, right, with business, where it's like you could want to start the business and then you're afraid, so you don't take the action steps, right? You could want an independent school education, but you're afraid the financial is not going to work. You're afraid that you don't belong, so you don't take the steps. It's always that fear. And that's why I said, get out of your way. You get out of your way. I have full belief and faith that God, the universe, will bring what is meant to you if you just get out of your
Yes.
way.
You have to go out and get it.
Yes,
Let the universe know that's what you want and go after it.
exactly.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else you think you would like to share with our listeners that I have not asked you?
And I'll also say, don't be afraid to learn. That's what I'm going to say. Don't be afraid to learn. If there's a school, if there is something you want to know, don't be afraid to learn. And once you learn, share that information. I want us, and I say us, Black and Brown families, when we're at our, we do brunches, our baby showers, our get together, have that time, carve out some time in that space to talk about, well, where's your child going to school? Do we like the school? What don't we like? What are different options? What can we do? I want us to be able to get back to have that conversation again. Bring back village, right? Bring back
Mm,
village, bring back community and what
right.
that looks like so we can help each other and pass on the knowledge and information. So we're not always starting from scratch. We don't need to start from scratch. Someone has
Right.
done some of the work and we can
Mhm.
help each other.
Right. And when you said that just now, something came to my timeline because what I'm learning is some of those things you have to do ahead of time.
Yes.
So maybe touch a little bit on that.
Oh my gosh, we can talk for hours on the timeline. I always said you want to start early, right? Applications typically open in August and September. So you want to start early with applications. But even prior to that, this is where you don't know how to navigate this process. Then we start with families as early as spring, the year before, months before they're even applying, because we want to make sure that we educate families so you understand how to navigate the process. There are some families who are learning and doing the process at the same time, and that's where it becomes overwhelming and they get frustrated, then they stop. So in terms of timeline, look, I just say reach out and let's ask, because there are families that connect with me that miss, say, the kindergarten cutoff. And the kindergarten cutoff is like the big entry point. And that was one of the reasons why ACES in our structure of our organization, we work with families that are applying to nursery school all the way to high school, because families learn about independent schools at different time and they come to us at different time. So I just say, if you don't know, just ask. Reach out to ACES. We're always happy to have a conversation with you, because families could be calling me. When you said that timeline could be different from families, where they could be calling me after their child missed some of the cutoffs, some of the entry points, and that conversation of like what they should do at what time looks very different.
Mm. And I know that could be a long conversation, but maybe if you
Okay.
can tell us a little bit about what you mean when you say entry points. Because for me, that was the first time I heard about entry points at one of your workshops.
So applying to independent schools, there are certain entry points that are the big work entry points for kids to be admitted. So kindergarten is a big entry point. That's where they admit a bulk of their students, the majority of their students. Some schools have some entry points at pre-K, and then some schools have a bigger entry point. The next entry point would be at sixth grade, some it's for fifth grade, and then ninth grade. So it's all, those are like the big entry points. Typically it's kindergarten, sixth grade, and ninth grade are the big entry point in which they admit students. And I say entry point because independent schools are mindful on their student teacher ratio. And so when they admit a kindergarten class, they're not necessarily going to overroll and keep admitting more students. So kindergarten ends our first grade if no one leaves. They say, okay, we are admitting, say, 40 kids to kindergarten. Those 40 kids are going to be there with the assumption that they're moving up to first grade together.
Mm-hmm.
And so then they have those 40 kids in first grade. And so when a family said, oh, I want to apply for first grade, if there's no space there, if those 40 kids remain and no one leaves, then they're necessarily not going to admit any kids for kindergarten because they're conscious of their student teacher ratio.
Mm-hmm.
So the entry points, kindergarten, sixth grade, and ninth grade are the big entry points. And there are some schools, that's why I said, reach out, let me know timeline, because there are some schools that have entry points at like off traditional entry points. And there are some schools that like do admit during those attrition years, we call them first grade, second grade, third grade. So I always say, just reach out and have a conversation because depending on the grade you're applying to, the information we share can differ.
Right. And when it comes to timeline, don't tell yourself you've missed the cutoff point. At least reach
Right.
out. You never know what the circumstances in certain schools. So, like you
Absolutely.
mentioned, reach out, have that conversation. And the fact that you know they're looking, you have an air out. And if something comes up, you can let them know. And that's I think, one of the big benefits of working with you because we're not there at the schools. You are. You get those calls. You're talking to them all the time. So we work with you and it works great.
I mean, 1,000%. I have just a quick story to share with that's exactly what happened this summer. I had a family who reached out and like missed the entry point, right? Missed the whole timeline of when to apply to school. We're talking to this family. It's now May, June. And we're talking to the family and then I connect with the school and they're like, wait, we actually had a family who jobs changes and they're relocating, they're leaving the country. We may have a spot open. And it just worked out that I was like, oh, I have a student that actually might
Wow.
be a great fit. Like, can we? And we go through the process, and that child is now at her independent school. So
Wow.
again, just reach out because it does happen. And you're right, having an ear and a connection. And this is why, our partnership with schools are helpful because I can connect with our partner school and they say, wait, actually, wait. We just had a situation that changed. Like things happen, life happens for people. And so situation happened, a family relocated out the country and it opened up a seat for another child to be
Wow.
admitted.
Wow. Thanks so much for sharing that. And for people because we're talking about New York, I mean, you're based in New York, so you're working out of the New York system. For people who are listening to us from other parts of the country, is there a place that they can go where people like yourself from different parts maybe meet up? And like, how do we get another you in another part of the country?
So I'm sure there are probably me or a different access organization in other parts of the country. I think you just tap into your schools or tap into a community. NAIS, the National Association of Independent Schools, that's a website you can go to. That's a national website that if you are in another part of the country, you can go to NAIS and there's a filter there where you can put like where you live and it can give you a list of the independent schools and you can just call the school, right? I think sometimes families feel like they can't even do that. You can call the school, go to their website and say, I'm interested in X school. And these schools almost always have tours, open house. They have events to talk about their schools, almost always have an admission office. So
Mm,
someone in admission office, admission, you work in admissions, your job is to welcome folks. So,
right.
they can always reach out to the admission office. And then hopefully someone in the admission office can put them in contact with, say, someone like myself. That's what happens with my partner school sometimes. Sometimes some parents call them and they can tell that the parents aren't familiar with the process and they say, you know what, you should connect with Latoya. You should connect with ACES. They do a really good job of educating families and talking through families with this process.
Okay. And would you say New York is very different in terms of the way the admission process or just the competitiveness of it all? Where it's more likely like if I'm in New York, I need you. I will definitely need you more than perhaps if I'm in another part of the country where I can probably navigate this by myself.
I'm not sure to say like you can probably navigate it by yourself. Listen, admissions applying to independent school can be daunting and New York is the beast of it all. It's the beast of it all. And I can go into the why of that and we will probably need more hours because it's based on around like our public school system and I would say like racism and redlining and neighborhoods and where families live and why in the urban communities our public schools aren't as robust as if we lived in the suburbs, right? I can go into again the data, the facts, and why that is. So that's why New York is the beast. in terms of the competitiveness and applying to independent schools. And so we can talk about that. So it depends on your location where you are and how pervasive is, again, the red line. And I can imagine in other urban cities, it's the same, right? Whereas in those urban cities, depends on where you are, your public school is not as great as the schools that in the suburbs.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much. I learned a lot, and I'm sure our listeners did as well. And just a reminder of how we can reach you so that persons can go ahead and do so.
Absolutely. My website, www.acesadmissions.com. We are on Instagram at ACES_admissions, and you will see all of our detail, email. You can also email at Latoya@ACESadmissions.com. Any questions, we're here to answer them for you.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Begin, Build, Blossom, Your Business Journey, a CME Accounting LLC podcast. Please subscribe and be on the lookout for our next episode. If you'd like to share any feedback with us, please email us at podcast@cmeaccountingllc.com.